What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, your home for the 2020 World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined by Daniel Starkand. And just as we predicted, 11-2 victory for the Dodgers. Chris Taylor and A.J. Pollock, as expected, 5 home runs between the two of them. The Dodger bullpen absolutely dominant after Joe Kelly's struggles at the beginning. Daniel, it's just this is exactly as we expected this game to play out, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, the Dodgers are playing with house money at this point, like I said. So why not go out and put up a nice little 11 spot in a bullpen game? Honestly, though, I'm not really surprised at the pitching performance. Like the Dodgers bullpen is just downright nasty. But yeah, that was a fun game overall. Can't say I expected that type of performance after what we saw yesterday. You know, it's good that the Dodgers have new life, but they still got a long way to go. But that was definitely a fun game.
Yeah, and the Dodgers, I mean, from the get-go, right? 2-0, right from the off the bat. Joe Kelly leaves the game injured. And I think every Dodger fan, if we're being honest with ourselves, was watching this unfold exactly as we expected. Joe Kelly's a guy who's been lights out for the Dodgers, who's been fantastic throughout this series. And so with Kelly, you're expecting positive things, and yet he gives up the home run. Then he has to come out of the game. And by the way, an absolute destructed moonball from Freddie Freeman to dead center field. Absolutely crushed.
Not like seeing that guy wake up after striking out 7 times or whatever.
Absolutely. He comes out of the game. You're down 2-0. The Dodgers go quietly in the first. And look, we can all be honest here and say, all right, this is how it's going to end, right? Like how motivated we're going to be. People tweeting about how quiet it was at Dodger Stadium, which understandably so. You know, I saw the tweets today about how tickets were down from $150 to $50, that kind of thing. But the Dodger offense gets it going in the bottom of the second. They retake the lead on a Pollock home run, a Pujols single, a Taylor home run to go up 3-2, and they never looked back. The bullpen, we'll talk about them. 8 1/3 innings pitched, no earned runs, just 3 base runners allowed, and 9 strikeouts after Joe Kelly leaves the game. 3 base runners allowed in 8 1/3 of a must-win game of a bullpen game. Unbelievable stuff for the Dodgers. Laura's asking what's going on with Kelly. I'm sure we'll get some updates. I believe they said a bicep injury or a shoulder injury, so not elbow, which was good. The fact that he was still sitting on the bench seemed comforting. Whether or not he's available in this series, TBD. And that could be a big decision because if he's out for a few days, if they take him off of the roster, he would be unavailable for the World Series should they get there. So some decisions to make with Dave Roberts. But let's not miss the most important thing here, which is Chris Taylor. Post-game, he was quoted as saying, "I don't look cool doing anything." I never look cool doing anything is what he said. I disagree, Daniel. Do you disagree?
He looked pretty cool tonight.
Yeah, absolutely dialed in. I mean, we said before the game, like, why is this guy hitting so low in the lineup? He's been the Dodgers' best hitter. Cody Bellinger, another great game. So lots to talk about here. Before we get into the nuts and bolts, I mean, we kind of like, I will self-describe myself as somebody who overreacts to moments and who overreacts to things. If you follow me on Twitter, this is no news to you. Every time the Dodgers made a pitching change, you could see my reactions that were not probably not scaled correctly to the moment to which I was reacting. But where are you at after this one? I mean, we talked, this was the biggest game for the Dodgers, A, because it's the one in front of them, and B, because you have both Scherzer and Buehler available for games 6 and 7. The Dodger offense comes to life after, hey, we think game 3 is going to be the wake-up call. It's not. Game 4 is another dud. Game 5, the offense wakes up. How are you feeling big picture about this team going back to Atlanta?
I mean, there definitely were a couple decisions I did not agree with, and I'm sure we'll get into those later. But I'd say overall, like, it's easy to make a manager look good when you go out and hit 5 home runs and score 11 runs. I mean, I'm not gonna overreact too much. Like, we've seen the Dodgers do this and then come back the next day and get shut out. Like that's usually how baseball works. But I will say it was good to see some guys get going. Like you said, Chris Taylor is on fire. AJ Pollock, who a lot of people like to crap on him for his postseason statistics compared to the regular season. Well, he comes through tonight, 2 home runs. Like you said, Cody Bellinger had another good night. He's all of a sudden red hot, looking like his old self, which is great to see. Trey Turner has 3 hits tonight. Your boy, you called that before the game. I'm not willing to say I'm,
3 hits and a hit by pitch. 4 times reaching base. All right. We're just going to throw that out there.
Yes. Max Fried decided to watch Cody Bellinger and then throw the ball right at Trey's shoulder one time. You're right.
Yeah.
But hey, all Trey has to do is get on first base. We know
Yeah.
he could steal second anytime he wants, pretty much. Like, they're running all over Darren Ode, which, by the way, I love seeing that. Like,
Has yet to
that is
throw
great
somebody
to
out
see.
all of the postseason.
Yeah,
It's an
he hasn't
amazing
thrown
stat.
anyone out. So Trey, just the singles are fine. We do not need you to hit any home runs. Keep taking that approach, and the power will come.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Lots to talk about tonight. I do want to talk about the offense. I want to talk about some decisions Dave Roberts made that I was not happy with. I do want to talk about the bullpen. There is a ton to get into, but a quick look at the lineup real quick, just as a note. So we talked about the top four, and kind of last night I tweeted out a picture about how all those guys were 0 for last night. Tonight, Mookie's just 1 for 5. Seager's 1 for 5. Will Smith's 0 for 4. So put in context, the Dodgers score 11 runs with Mookie, Seager, and Will Smith going a combined 2 for 14 with 1 walk and 3 strikeouts, okay? Trey Turner, 3 for 4. AJ Pollock, 3 for 5. Pujols, 2 for 4. Taylor, 4 for 5. Bellinger, 3 for 4. How is that for a back half of the lineup? That group of 4, the bottom 5 through 8 in the lineup, they combined to go 12 for 18 from the dish tonight, 10 RBIs, 8 runs scored. They also added a walk in there as well. So unbelievable stuff. Then you've got the bullpen. Again, Kelly struggles off the bat, but then you've got 6 guys coming in behind them that were absolutely lights out. Folks in the chat, give me your headline. What's the biggest thing you take away from this game if you want to throw a headline out? I mean, CT3 seems like the obvious one here.
Yeah.
Maybe CT3X like 3 times. You could do that. That's kind of a nice headline again.
CT43, a little basketball reference.
There we go. Yeah, I've said before I'm not a big fan of the Apollo 11 or whatever the one guy calls AJ Pollock. It's not my favorite nickname in the world. I think Taylor's got to be the Can we incorporate bullpen somewhere in there? That's the question. CT3 and the bullpen. I think those two are the joint headlines as well. So David says Taylor's the headline. Nomo FOMO. I wish it was CT4. We got a chance. The offense turned the lineup over. You know, I was joking with a friend at one point. The over-under on the game was 10.5. And like the second or third inning, I'm like, that's a nice number. I like the Dodgers bullpen. I think they're going to be fine. You know, and I'm like, there's no way the Dodgers offense is going to score more than 9 runs in this game. Well, sure enough, they make it all the way to the 8th inning looking like you're going to cover on that one. And then they add 4 more runs to tack on there. So anyways, tough one. Yeah. Let's see. Eric on Facebook points out Dodgers now 7 straight elimination game wins, which is crazy when you think the record, I believe they said, is 10 straight. Like the Dodgers would have to come back and win this series just to tie, or excuse me, they wouldn't even tie, right? They'd be at 9, I guess, after tonight. If they win the next 2, they'd be at 9 straight elimination game victories. So
yeah,
crazy stuff there. Let's go through. Here's how the game played out, because I do think this is sort of gives us a headline and gives us a big picture view. Again, the Dodgers come into this game. They need to win. Joe Kelly's on the mound. We were talking beforehand. Kelly is a guy that both of us felt comfortable with going into this game. I predicted, jokingly but half serious, that I thought he would get a lot of length from Joe Kelly. Not the case. He lasts 2/3 of an inning.
You said, I'm
sure. Yeah. I think I toned it down to 2 1/3 by the end, but still, regardless, just as ridiculous. He gives up a hit. Freddie Freeman absolutely crushes the ball again. He was batting 3rd tonight. And then Joe Kelly leaves after getting 2 outs. Evan Phillips comes into the game. We're going to talk MVPs later. I think there's a couple guys in the bullpen that deserve a shout out. Phillips is one. He ends up getting 4 outs for the Dodgers, keeping the game at 2-0. He strikes out 3 of those guys on just 15 pitches. Obviously a little misleading when you get a 1-pitch strikeout to end the first inning, but I digress. The second inning is when the Dodgers offense figures it out. AJ Pollock solo home run. Pujols singles with the next at bat. Chris Taylor home run after that. Cody Bellinger reaches in that spot as well. But the Dodgers end up ahead 3-2. Chris Taylor 2-out RBI single in the bottom of the 3rd. Dodgers go up 4-2. You're still in that zone though. We're 4-2. None of us are comfortable, right? Like we're all thinking bullpen game. One guy has a bad night. 3 batter minimum.
Yeah. And also the thing is, how many times have we seen the Dodgers offense score a few early runs and then just like shut down for 5 or 6 innings or whatever? So yeah, definitely not comfortable at all at 4-2.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the good news is Chris Taylor also not comfortable at 4-2. He homers again in the 5th to make it a 6-2 game. He homers again in the 7th to make it a 7-2 game. Trey Turner with an RBI single, and then AJ Pollock with a home run to make it an 11-2 game in the 8th inning. An absolutely dominant performance offensively for the Dodgers and pitching-wise as well. The bullpen game, the announcers made this comment, and I think it was an interesting one. The 2 best pitching performances the Dodgers have had in this series have been the 2 bullpen games. So this is going to be a crazy question, Daniel, okay? I just want you to brace yourself. I want you to prepare for it. Max Scherzer fully rested for game 6. Walker Buehler fully rested for game 7. Does the thought
Bullpen
cross
game?
your mind of throwing a bullpen game in one of those? Because you get a day off. Everybody's going to be fully rested. And realistically, if you have enough guys that you trust, throwing a bullpen game where everybody throws 1 inning, 15 pitches doesn't destroy you for the next one. So I don't know if that means you think about piggybacking Buehler and Scherzer in game 6 and then maybe leave yourself a bullpen game in 7. Does this thought even cross your mind considering how Scherzer and Buehler have pitched of late?
No, the thought does not even cross my mind. You go with those guys. I will say, yes, those guys struggled in their first starts of this series, but that was also coming off unconventional weeks prior. Like Buehler, the game before, starts on short rest. Max Scherzer obviously pitches an inning in game 5. So I'd say this time for both of them, they've at least had a normal week, to do their complete routine, to throw a normal bullpen. So I think they're both going to be ready. I will say, though, with how good the bullpen looks, 2 things. One is you could afford to have a shorter leash on those guys, which we saw, in their starts in this series when they didn't have it. Like Dave's not hesitating to go out and get them in the 4th inning,
unless
or the
your
5th
name's
inning, wherever. Yes. But I mean, obviously you'd like to get some length out of them, but I think it's a luxury knowing you don't really have to, if you have to go get them early, that's totally fine. And then also, one thing is, I think we also see how nasty this bullpen is. We do not need starting pitchers in the bullpen. Our bullpen is good enough to handle whatever they have to get through. Give me the 6th guy in our bullpen over any starter on this roster. If we want to win the World Series, we're going to need our starting pitchers to perform, and I don't think there's any reason to just throw them in for relief appearances, just for the hell of it, when you got the nastiest bullpen in baseball.
Daniel, Julio Urias is pitching in game 7 if it gets there, right?
I know he is. I know.
So, there's almost a part of me that's if we're just going to lose, just let it happen in game 6. Because if Julio comes into game 7 and blows it while Gratterall is just sitting idly by, or Knebel is sitting idly by, I'm going to lose my mind. A lot of people in the chat, by the way, agreeing with you. No, you stick with your starting pitchers. Laura says you go on a short leash. Same idea Daniel M throws out there. And I think it's fair. I think, it's like you said, you could essentially say we're not expecting 5 or 6 innings from our starter. It's going to be a bullpen game that starts out with Max Scherzer, or it's going to be a bullpen game that starts out with Walker Buehler. Because, again, I can't stress this enough. If you can get 3 to 4 innings, if you get 4 innings out of both of those guys and keep yourselves in it, getting 5 innings from Jansen, Treinen, Knebel, now Joe Kelly is a concern, but the way Gratterall has pitched, the way Vesia has pitched, Bickford has been good.
Knebel looked good again tonight after struggling his last few outings. He looked great
Non-opener Corey Knebel also looked good tonight. That's true. But if those guys, if you just need 1 inning from each of those, it doesn't at all prevent you from bringing them back the next night. And so the back-to-back games, rather than having 3 in a row or something, completely changes the way you approach it. So I agree with you on the short leash. I also agree with you that there's no way starting pitchers should be coming out of the bullpen. We talked about this before and after the Julio Urias game, in which he comes in and it was this is madness. It's insane that this is happening, especially after, oh, by the way, look at that. Blake Treinen can get 6 outs in a row, just like we needed him to get in game 2. He doesn't there. Gratterall, 6 outs, no problem,
14 pitches,
14 pitches. So unbelievable stuff there. And let's talk about the bullpen really quick. Joe Kelly struggles again. A fascinating decision real quick on Joe Kelly. He calls himself out of the game with 2 strikes. Again, I think it was initially reported as a shoulder issue. I think I saw biceps somewhere else. If you see anything on Twitter, if anybody sees something on Twitter, let us know. But that'll be a fascinating situation, because something like that, with the pitcher who says I have bicep issues or shoulder issues, that's a wild card. If you're the Dodgers, if you're unsure, let's say Joe Kelly, if he's going to be out for 7 days, do you need the extra spot in your bullpen? The Dodgers could go get David Price. They could go get Clevenger. They could go get somebody, but it would mean Kelly would be out for any future series. So with Scherzer and Buehler on the mound, how safely do you play it with Joe Kelly as far as letting him sit there and be unavailable versus going and getting another arm?
Yeah, I mean, I guess. Well, first off, it depends like how he's feeling,
Yeah.
how serious the injury is. Like, it very well could be season ending. Then, of course, you obviously replace him. But I'd say like if there's any chance that this is just like a 2 or 3 day thing, then I just leave him on the roster. Like, you got enough pitching to get through the next 2 games. You got 2 starters ready to go.
Yeah.
You got everyone else in the bullpen will be available because there's an off day tomorrow. So I think you leave him on the roster just because if there's a chance that he's ready to go for the World Series, like I like Joe Kelly a lot better than
Yeah.
whoever would be replacing him on the roster. So I guess it just depends how he feels. But I mean, to me, it's worth that gamble just because I don't think you're going to need that guy
Yeah.
the next 2 days. And then for the World Series, obviously, then you could reassess and if he's not feeling great, then you could just replace him on the roster there. So I'd stick with him, but it obviously just depends on how he's feeling because biceps. Bicep tendonitis, whatever he's dealing with, like that's usually no joke.
Yeah.
Like that's not just something that your shoulder is hurting and you wake up the next day and it's feeling great all of a sudden. Like
Yeah.
so, we'll see. But if there's a chance he could pitch, I'd just stay with him because I still like Joe Kelly, even though he didn't have
Yeah.
the best outing tonight.
Yeah, Gage West, I completely agree with you on YouTube. He says leave Kelly on the roster for game 6 and then reevaluate for game 7 if you need another arm. Got to win the NLCS before you win the World Series. I think that's the right move. There's almost no scenario in which you would need Joe Kelly for game 6. And so just see what happens. Like if Scherzer pitches in game 6 and you do win, but Scherzer gives you 6 innings, then you're probably not going to need an extra arm for game 7. Of course, you take the risk. The Dodgers have been in some crazy extra inning type games. And so you run the risk of getting caught in his pot like that, where you just have a guy on your roster who's completely useless to you if he really is injured. As you said, I mean, the thing that scares me is the bicep. And that's where I'm like, even if best case scenario, this is a 5 to 7 day injury, like, do you really keep him around knowing that then he would miss the first maybe 2 games of the next series if you even were to get there? That's interesting. I mean, are there names? Let's just say that Joe Kelly is determined to be out for 10 days, and so they need to go get someone. Some people in here mentioning Mitch White as an option, David Price, Clevenger is a guy that we've seen them call up guys that haven't been in the majors in 7 months, aka Andy Burns. Is there one of those guys that you prefer more than others?
I mean, honestly, to be honest, if you're replacing him in this series, and sorry, I'm just keeping
Yeah.
an eye on my phone to see if there is a Joe Kelly update, so we have something firm. But honestly, if you're replacing him on the roster for this series, I would go. Honestly, I'd go Clevenger
Yeah.
if he's healthy, just because that's a lefty to give their lefties another look. Like I feel like
Yeah.
Rosario and Freeman and all those guys have now seen Vesia and Brule kind of a lot in this series, and I'd say those 2 guys have done pretty well
Very well.
against them. But if you could give another lefty out of the bullpen, just he probably would throw like 1 inning
Yeah.
kind of early in the game. So I think that's the option I'd go with. I don't know how healthy he is. After him, I think David Price would be the next guy in line. He's another lefty, although he's not really a lefty specialist type. He would be more of like a length type guy,
Yeah.
which with the way Tony Gonsolin has been pitching, like you might want to start considering other
Yeah.
options for your length guy. And obviously David Price has the postseason experience. So I think those are the 2 options right there. I'm not too high on Mitch White.
Here's an interesting name. CK mentions as well as Jonathan Robinson. Victor Gonzalez. Do you kick the tires on Victor Gonzalez? This is a guy that's pitched in
I mean,
big moments, but it was terrible
he
the
did.
last time we saw him.
Yeah. I mean, he has not been on this team's radar like
Yeah.
since they sent him down. So I don't know. The fact that his name hasn't even been mentioned like probably says something about him. They probably don't have a whole lot of confidence in him. I know once the sticky stuff crackdown happened, his numbers were
Not implying
impacted
anything here. Okay, we're not
heavily.
reporting anything.
Right. But look, I always loved Victor
Yeah.
Gonzalez. He was huge for the Dodgers in the playoffs last year, but just the fact that his name isn't even on the radar probably tells you all you need to
Yeah,
know.
I mean, Price was the extra pitcher, right, in previous series, and so he seems likely to be that guy. Although, look, again, the Dodgers have just called up Andy Burns, who, like, you could have given me 35 guesses at who the next guy up would have been, and Andy Burns, I can assure you, would not have been in the top 25 names on that list.
Hit a nice little ground ball today.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? 97 off the bat. I'm gonna give him that. 97 off the bat.
We'll take that.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair point. Now, I think if you want to be optimist, Victor Gonzalez, and say, hey, we got a bunch of guys who played like crap for the last 2 months of the season and are just absolutely killing it. Maybe we go get the guys.
He came through last year.
Maybe we go get the guys that have been bad for the last 2 months, because that seems to be a good omen for guys that are good, and the guys that were good for the last 2 months have been mostly bad, except for my guy Trey turning it around tonight. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, Victor Gonzalez, it's an interesting name, but I do agree with you. Laura said somebody mentioned Clevenger. It was Justin Lorber. He was the one who mentioned that he had been pitching. He was on a rehab assignment and had actually looked good. He's a lefty. We've talked about how the Braves struggle against left-handed pitching in general. Although with Soler back, you might not want to get too many left-handed pitchers there.
Hey, if they want to take Eddie Rosario out of the
Well, it'd be
lineup
Jock.
for Soler or Jock, that's fine
Yeah.
with me too. Like those have been two of the guys doing the most damage in this series.
Well, I was shocked.
They want to take either of those guys out. That's fine with me.
I think they said Jock won for his last 9. It's like
he has slowed down. He played well in the Atlanta portion of the series, but he has slowed down a bit. But we know with Jocktober, like we got 2 righties on the mound the next 2 games. That could change at any time.
If you had given me 9 guesses on how many hits he's had in his last 9 at bats, I can tell you one would have been my 8th guess, right ahead of 0 for 9, because it just feels like he's due every time that he's up. Okay, let's talk. So going back through the bullpen, Kelly struggles. Evan Phillips, 4 outs, 3 strikeouts. I mean, dude, this guy. Somebody pointed out this is a guy that got DFA'd by the Orioles from their AAA team. He has out of options, but I looked it up. He's got like 3 or 4 more years of team control. Yeah. The Dodgers, as Justin Lorber pointed out, have kind of made a point to keep him around and not DFA him. He is out of options, so he can't be sent down. But my goodness, I mean, he was touching 97 a couple nights ago. The slider is absolutely filthy. I don't know if it's that people just don't have looks on him, or they don't have a scouting report on him, or if his stuff is just as nasty as it looks. But I mean, unbelievable to think that Evan Phillips was going to be your guy that's putting the fire out in the first and second inning of a must-win game, and just effortlessly. I mean, like, could have kept pitching if not for his hitting spot coming up in the lineup. So Evan Phillips has been fantastic. I'll just mention one more name and then ask you. And then Vesia comes in behind him. 1 inning, 1 hit, 1 strikeout. Does get bailed out by the caught stealing there, but credit to him for giving his catcher a chance to actually throw somebody out. Will Smith throws him out there. So Phillips and Vesia, 2 guys not on the radar at the beginning of the season. Vesia came up, struggled. Phillips was nowhere to be found. Unbelievable stuff from those 2 guys tonight.
Yeah, I mean, look, Evan Phillips, Vesia, Bickford, Brule, Knebel, like those are 5 guys who were not in the Dodgers organization last year, and they gave up pretty much nothing for any of those guys, and all 5 of those guys have been awesome in the postseason. So yeah, I mean, Andrew Friedman is an absolute wizard. He continues to find these guys. I think Evan Phillips was with the Rays for a hot sec, so I don't know how they let him go. They're usually good at identifying that same type of talent. But yeah, he looked great tonight. He looks like a guy who could maybe be a high leverage type guy for the Dodgers next year. Like, I probably wouldn't rush him into it this year just because you got so many other great options. But if, let's say, they don't re-sign Kenley and Kelly, those are their 2 free agents, and Knebel is also a free agent. There's 3 guys. I think you start to feel a lot more comfortable, with this bullpen, with the emergence of guys like Phillips and Brule and Vesia and all those guys. So yeah, can't say enough about the bullpen. I mean, they've been great all year. We talked before the show, everyone hates bullpen games, but in reality, the Dodgers have a great record in bullpen games, and they had a lot of them this season. I feel like it wasn't very often that the Dodgers had a full 5 starters in their rotation this season, just because of injuries, which is unfortunate. But you could get through a season and still win 106 games like that when you have a bullpen like the Dodgers, which is awesome.
Yeah, CK points out Joe Kelly does have a team option for next year, but I believe it's a $12 million option. So he will not be. It's a $4 million buyout or pay him $12 million. I can't imagine the Dodgers are going to pay him $12 million. Although if there's an $8 million gap between having him and not having him, maybe you do. With all the money that they're going to need to be throwing around to hopefully keep Corey Seager, Chris Taylor, Max Scherzer, Clayton Kershaw. I think Joe Kelly might be a little further down the list. Somebody else asked earlier, and I think it's worth saying, is this the best Dodgers bullpen that you can remember? You and I have been on this train for at least the last couple of months, saying absolutely yes. It's arguably the best version of Kenley Jansen we've ever seen. Blake Trinan is easily the best setup man they've ever seen. I think you could argue that Knebel and Kelly are probably the best number 3, number 4. I mean, you're comparing them to a Pedro Baez type. They're better versions of Pedro Baez than Pedro Baez has ever been. If you want to talk about left-handed specialists, Vesia has been as good as any left-hander that they've had coming out of the bullpen in a long time. I mean, Jake McGee was really good, but I think Vesia is the same guy as McGee, except he can actually pitch in the postseason, unlike McGee. And then you just go down the list. I mean, if Bickford's your worst reliever, Brusdar Gratterall, who was bad during the postseason, regular season, But I mean, he looks like he could be a closer tomorrow, like the way he's pitching right now. Brule is a lefty specialist that you trust, that you're not worried about when he comes in. Knable, Phillips. I mean, I don't know how you even argue that this is the best Dodgers bullpen we've ever seen.
Yeah, and just think, like, imagine if they had Jimmy Nelson in that group as well.
Caleb
like,
Ferguson.
With how great he looked Yeah, Tommy Canley's another guy they signed who should be back next year. So yeah, I also just going back to the free agent talk real quick, like with Ferguson and Tommy Canley coming back, there's also 2 more relievers. So I'm with you on the Kelly thing. But yeah, to me, it's not really a question. I guess, 2017, they had a pretty good bullpen. Like Brandon Morrow, I know he was pitching every game, but he was lights out until the World Series there when they were cheating against him. So they had some other dudes. I'd say last year was a pretty good bullpen. But yeah, to me, this is the best and most complete bullpen I've seen from the Dodgers. Like, it's just dude after dude after dude. And they all throw hard. They all have, they're breaking stuff like breaks 18 inches. Like, it's just ridiculous the amount of guys they could trot out there.
Yeah, I was trying to look up the Dodgers relief pitchers from 2017. Here we go. Team pitching. Yeah, Kenley Jansen.
You had Maeda was there in the postseason, which was a big boost.
That's true. Yeah, Kenley Jansen obviously has been the best guy that they've had. He had a 1.32 ERA. Baez 2.95. Josh Fields 2.84. Nobody likes Josh Fields because of the Yordan Alvarez trade. Not his fault. Morrow 2.06 ERA. And then some guys. I mean, Tony Watson was there for a bit. Tony Cingrani was pretty good as a lefty. Stripling was pretty good out of the bullpen. Luis Avalon. So yeah, to your point, they had a bunch of guys, but I mean,
I'd take this one over what you just mentioned
by a lot. And again, I mean, Jansen like 1.32 ERA. So when I said Jansen's been as good, I mean he was probably better in 2017. But Treinen has a sub 2 ERA. He would have been a run better. Well, I guess, I mean, okay, let's say even Treinen and Morrow is a push. It would have been pretty close ERA. But then you go to like Pedro Baez versus Knable versus Kelly, Avilon versus Alex Vesia. I think you see where we're headed with that one. More pitchers from tonight's game. Just going back. Oh, and somebody else asked. Yes, Vesia is the guy who came over in the Dylan Floro trade.
Dylan Floro.
Yep. So then Gratterall. That's the big one. 2 innings pitched, 2 strikeouts, 14 pitches, 6 outs. I don't know if you said 6 or 8 pitches you were expecting from him for an inning. He did both. He did both. He wanted to make sure both of those were covered. I mean, he's shattering bats. He gets 2 strikeouts. He's throwing hard. The breaking stuff is working. I don't know what happened to this guy, but this is the guy that you hoped that he would become. He's still not missing bats. Like, we can be honest. He's still not missing bats at the rate that you would hope for and expect even with the stuff that he has. But if you're not going to miss bats and instead you're going to shatter them, then that works out okay. Gratterall, really, really good tonight.
Yeah. And do we want to get into the decision now? Because that was probably the most interesting decision of the night, I'd say.
So I'll set the stage because I think there were 4 decisions. I think there were 4 decisions that Dave Roberts had to make tonight that I had some level of issue with. Okay, 2 of them were pinch hitting decisions, and and then 2 of them were pitching decisions. So the first pitching decision is like you say, and I guess this one's connected to one of the hitting ones. Gratterall comes in for the 5th, gets out of it. That's his 2nd inning. He's thrown just 14 pitches. He comes up with Cody Bellinger on first base. And I'm like, heck yeah, let Gratterall hit. You're up 6-2 at this point. There's 2 outs. There's a runner on first base. Gratterall's dealing. Just keep your pitcher in the game. They let Gratterall hit. On the first or second pitch, maybe it's a second pitch, Cody Bellinger steals second. So now you've got a runner in scoring position. Whatever. I like the decision because if Cody gets thrown out, then who cares? Like, your pitcher spot's due up and you're going to pinch it anyways. They leave Gratterall in with a runner in scoring position. It's a 4-run game, okay? They are not up by 9 at this point. They're up by 4. They let Gratterall hit. He grounds out. And then he doesn't come back out to pitch the next inning. Blake Treinen comes in to pitch. He gets 6 outs on 14 pitches. You're in a spot where your bullpen, by the way, is getting near to be depleted because Bickford and Gonzalez are both essentially unavailable from the night before. You've already burned Kelly, Phillips, and Vesia, and Gratterall. So the only 4 guys you have left are Treinen, Knable, Jansen, and Brule. And between those 4, you need 4 innings. And yet they pulled Gratterall in a spot where they didn't need to. All I was saying was, A, the best option is just leave Gratterall in to pitch. B, if you're not going to let him pitch, then let him hit. Because the 2 decisions from a hitting perspective that I had issues with were in the bottom of the 3rd. They had the pitcher spot come up with runners at first and second in a 4-2 game, and they hit Andy Burns, who he and Austin Barnes are neck and neck for the worst hitter on the roster. And that's the guy you bring in with runners at first and second in a 2-run game. And then in the 5th, you have a runner on first, which I'm fine. Let the pitcher hit. But if the pitcher's not going to pitch, then pull him out of the game when Bellinger steals second and bring in somebody else to hit. And people are like, oh, it's only the 3rd inning. It's only the 5th inning. Well, guess what? Like, they didn't have other opportunities where the pitcher spot comes up. You have Lux. You have Beatty. If you're saving Beatty for the Pujols thing, then that's fine. Then let Gavin Lux hit there. Like, do not let your pitcher hit there. Let freaking Julio Urias hit there for all I freaking care.
Exactly.
Do not do either of the two things they did, which is eventually let Gavin Lux, who's your best pinch hitter, sit on the bench after 2 times you have the pitcher spot up with the runner in scoring position. So there's a lot there. There's the Burns decision. There's the Gratterall decision. There's the Gratterall hitting and then pitching decision. So take it wherever you want to from there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much with you on everything you just said. You laid it out pretty well. I will say, I'm okay with hitting Burns there in that situation. Like, that's early in the game. You got a chance to score. I like using a pinch hitter there. And like you said,
I would have just used a different pinch hitter. That was all I was saying.
Sure,
Go to a better one.
But to me, like, burning Burns there, you're not losing a whole lot. Like, you still have all your, like, some people might say, what, are you going to burn Lux in the 3rd inning? Or
Yeah,
like
what are you
that?
saving them for? Like, you don't know that another opportunity is going to come up with a runner in scoring position. It's a 2-run game. Like, you're just basically punting on an opportunity to score there, if we're being honest. And for me, it's like, yeah, you use your best hitter because as it played out, A, it didn't matter later in the game, and B, the pitcher spot never again came up in a meaningful spot. So that would be my only beef with how this whole thing played out.
Yeah, it played out like that, but not every game will play out like that, and you don't know that at the time. So I was cool with Burns there just because I'd rather save those other guys for later in the game when they could get better matchups. But all in all, like that, I don't think that decision was, game-changing either way. Like, obviously, you want to get some more runs in there, but also there's still so much game left. To me, the Gratterall decision was the confusing one. Like you said, you either let him hit, that's fine, but then let him come back out and pitch. If he's not coming back out to pitch, why are you not using a hitter in that situation? Like, and I don't want to hear the argument that, like, oh, Cody Bellinger was on first base when Gratterall went up to the plate. Well, we've been stealing on Darren like this whole series. He hasn't thrown a single runner out. Cody's probably getting to second base in that at bat regardless. So why would you not send up one of your pinch hitters there if Gratterall's not pitching? To me, the number one decision to make, and I thought they were doing it when they sent Gratterall up there, was to just let him pitch. At like 14 pitches, 2 innings, he looks awesome. Like you said, they're kind of running out of pitchers here. Why not send him back out there? Like, you got Treinen warming up, fine. Any sign of trouble, you take him out and go to Treinen. But to me, 14 pitches in 2 innings, why not try to ride him there? Like, you can't just bank on getting 2 innings out of Treinen the way they did. Like, Treinen did not look great in his first inning.
Tons of pitches.
I think he threw like 21 pitches or something in his first inning. So it didn't backfire this time, but you can't just bank on that. To me, I'd rather bank on the guy that you see on the mound pitching and looks great. Give me the known commodity. Even though Treinen's a better pitcher, you don't know how he's going to look on this specific night. And to me, when you get 2 perfect innings out of Gratterall on 14 pitches, let's just keep riding that. Let's just keep going. Let's get one more out of him. Let's shorten this game for our main bullpen guys. And you can't say he was tired. Like, the guy made 14 pitches. He barely busted a sweat out there. So to me, that was the most confusing decision of the night. I'm glad it didn't come back to hurt the Dodgers, but there definitely are scenarios where that could have come back and hurt them. Like, if Treinen gets rocked, and let's say the Braves tie it, like, by the 9th inning, we're out of pitchers.
Yeah, I agree. And the Gratterall thing, keep in mind, it was a 6-2 game at that point. So we're not talking about a 1-run game where you're taking a chance with Gratterall against the top of the lineup. It was the pitcher spot due up first, followed by the top of the lineup. Gratterall had been dealing. I would have taken my chances. Treinen's available if he gets into trouble. Even if he puts a batter on, like, then go get him. But I just want to circle back.
And also, one thing you mentioned, the Julio thing, I'm totally with you on that. Like, if you know Gratterall's not pitching, why is he the one hitting? Why not send Julio up there, who he's not a great hitter, but he definitely has a better chance of getting a hit there than Gratterall, and he's not pitching in this game. So to me, I'm with you on that one 100%.
Do we know he wasn't pitching in this game, Daniel? Can we confirm that?
I'd hope he wasn't.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to circle back because I do think this is something I got a lot of pushback on for Twitter to the Andy Burns situation. Because I hear the people saying, well, what happens if you have a spot later in the game? That to me is a hypothetical. Like, the one thing you know is you have a spot right there in the bottom of the 3rd. Like, a run in the bottom of the 3rd is worth just as many runs as a run in the bottom of the 7th inning or the 8th inning. So you would say, and I'm not saying you particular, but like, my argument is, I know a situation I have. I have runners on first and second with 2 outs in a 2-run game in the bottom of the third. I am going to plan for that moment. I am going to pinch hit in that moment, which, by the way, part of this is based on the fact that you have 2 lefties in Lux and Beatty who are probably pretty interchangeable. So, like, if you want to go burn Lux there, then that's fine. I mean, a single makes it a 5-2 game. A double makes it a 6-2 game. Like, you just had a chance to blow it out of the water. And so if they screw that up, and then let's say the Braves come back and now you're down 5-4 or something, and Lux comes up with nobody on in the 8th or whatever the situation is, like, okay, cool. Well, if we had gotten the 5th run earlier. So I know this might seem minor, but to me, part of it's based in the fact that you have a bunch of guys that you feel kind of equally good at in different tiers. You have Beatty and Lux, in my opinion, who are in their own tier as guys you actually trust. Then you have Souza, who's a guy who's like you probably shouldn't trust, but you kind of do trust. And then you have Burns and Barnes, who are perfectly named after each other as guys that you just don't trust. Like if their names, the initials are A and B, whatever. I know, and all this to say, Burns had a 97-mile-an-hour exit velocity ball up the middle, okay? So not a bad piece of hitting, but to me, it's like just take the runs that are right in front of you and don't plan for, well, what if in the 7th inning we have another opportunity? Like, if it was a runner at first, I'm not saying this, there's a runner at first and a runner at second. A single scores a run. I want my best hitter giving a chance there. So you don't need to respond if you don't want to. If you want to, you can. But
look, you make a valid point. That's all I want to say. Like, I would have been fine if they did either thing there. What I would not have been fine with is them sticking with who I don't remember who was pitching at the time, but if they pulled a Gratterall with whoever was pitching, like I'm glad they at least used a pinch hitter. Like they recognized like this is a chance to score. Let's go for it. No, it wasn't their best guy, but at least they sent a hitter up there. Whereas in the Gratterall situation, they just sent him up there for whatever reason.
Yeah. Continuing at the bullpen,
and that was later in the game too. Like if you're fine pinch hitting a guy in the 3rd inning, why would you not be fine doing it in the 6th inning?
Well, and they finished the game with 2 guys on their bench as well. So Treinen comes in for 2 innings, as you said. The 1st inning, a little bit dicey, gives up the hit, ends up getting out of it, comes back with the perfect inning. He finishes with just 27 pitches. So kudos to him. Knebel, 1 inning, 1 hit, strikes out the side. Unbelievable stuff. And then Kenley Jansen, no strikeouts, but 10 pitches, 9 strikes. Great stuff from him. Let's talk quickly Knebel, and then I see some questions about Pujols and the lineup for next game that we'll get to here. But Knebel, I mean, this is a guy we've talked about. He opens 2 games. He looks pedestrian in both of those. Now he's in a spot where, as he says, his routine is exactly as he's used to it being, and he's touching 99. His curveball is absolutely filthy. Does this game make you feel more comfortable with Knebel? Because it seemed like he had kind of moved slightly down the pecking order because of the performances that he had in those 2 openers.
Yeah, I mean, these things could change from outing to outing, but I will say, like, the key for him has always been having command of that curveball just because it's such a nasty pitch and plays off his fastball so well. And in the outings he struggled, he really hasn't been able to command that pitch. Like, he's been throwing it all over the place. And when hitters know that he can't throw that curveball for a strike, they could just sit fastball. And yeah, he throws 97, but when you're sitting on 97 and you're a major league hitter, like you could hit it. So to me, it was a really encouraging outing. It was great to see him get that curveball working. He was filthy out there, but we'll see how he looks the next time out because he was looking filthy for a while there going into the postseason and then, has a few bad outings. But I never really lost trust in Corey Knebel. Like, even when he was having those not so great outings, like he was still minimizing damage. Like, it's not like he was going out there and getting rocked for 4 runs or anything. So I've always lost trust in him, but I definitely I agree with you that it seemed like he maybe moved a step down in the pecking order. Like they could have easily went to him as the opener again tonight, and they decided not to. But hey, great outing, and with the Kelly uncertainty moving forward, he's someone they're going to need.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's get to some questions. A bunch of people asking very similar questions, so we'll get to it. The Dodgers lineup. Ian Anderson slated to pitch, I believe, for the Braves from the right-handed side. So you go from a left-handed pitcher in Fried to a right-hander in Ian Anderson. What do you do with the lineup? Obviously, A.J. Pollock, I would expect to stay in that game. Chris Taylor will be playing third. Mookie Betts in right field. So the question is, what do you do in center field / first base? Cody Bellinger will absolutely be in the lineup. Do you keep his defense out in center field? And do you go to, I suppose you could choose between Pujols or Beatty. So with the right-hander on the mound, my guess is that they would go with Beatty. Pujols had been pretty bad, but looked good tonight. But of course, all of his at-bats came against left-handers, which is where he's most comfortable. Or do you put Bellinger at first and go with Gavin Lux in center field? That's probably your best offensive lineup, especially the way Gavin Lux has looked. He hasn't hit great of late, but the last game I think he played, he was 0 for 0 with 2 walks. So he's putting together good at bats at least, and has looked better than Beatty, and definitely better than Pujols would look against righty. So if it were up to you, Daniel, how would you handle that situation?
There's a lot of factors to consider here. Something else you have to consider is that Max Scherzer is a fly ball heavy pitcher. So ideally, you want your best defensive outfield out there. And honestly, because of that, I think I would go Cody in center and Beatty at first. I'd love to get Lux in the lineup, but you're not taking AJ Pollock out of the lineup after the night he just had. Yeah. He's in there for me. So to me, Lux is just kind of the odd man out here, and it's unfortunate. I think he's taken a lot of good at bats, but I think the difference between him and Beatty isn't huge. Like, you could throw Beatty in that 8 spot, as and then later in the game when they go to their lefty relievers, you could go to Pujols there or whatever. So I'd go with that. To me, I just want, with Max Scherzer being a fly ball pitcher, honestly, Walker Buehler's kind of a fly ball pitcher too. Give me Cody in center. He's a game changer out there. And to me, the offensive drop off from Lux to Beatty isn't huge,
Yeah, and I think the key point to be made about Pujols as well is that gives you both a great left-handed and a great right-handed option off of the bench in Gavin Lux and Albert Pujols. So that would be my issue with people saying, hey, just keep the same lineup, start Pujols. It's like you literally have no right-handed bats that you trust off of the bench. And that's an issue for me.
You got 2 lefties, and they got all lefties
totally
down there.
And that's an issue for me because all Dave Roberts cares about is what hand the pitcher pitches with and what hand the batter bats with. That's all that matters. Yeah. So it's like Gavin Lux and Beatty
get. If Pujols isn't on the bench, then you're for sure getting Andy Burns pinch hitting in a key situation. And I don't know if anyone wants that unless it's like the third inning.
There might not be a post-game show. If that happens, if Andy Burns comes up in a big spot with Gavin Lux sitting on the bench because it's a left-hander, there might not be a post-game show that night. We'll just put it that way. But yeah, I think I'm with you. I mean, and we've seen before, I believe it was in the NLDS maybe, or was it game 1 of the NLCS? It must have been game 1 of the NLCS. Anyways, Beatty started an outing where Scherzer pitched. I can't remember. Oh, maybe it was the wild card game.
No, it was game 3 at Dodger Stadium, the win game.
Okay.
Because Gavin Lux came off the bench and almost hits that bomb to tie it up in the 9th. Yeah. But the wind knocked it down.
People reminding Souza, also a right-handed bat off the bench. If you want yourself,
just a great option. He almost threw down a bunt.
Hey, you know what? Look, I was the guy that defended the other bunt. It's worth noting he was not trying to sacrifice anybody. He was trying to push bunt. So, which look, we've crapped on Cody. Like, just bunt against the shift. If you can't get a hit, you know what, Souza? Credit to you. You took the advice. You humbled yourself. You tried to bunt that. So good thing for him. Okay, well, it's been way longer than normal before we get to this, but MVP of the game. I mean, there's not even a point of having a conversation about this. Christopher Taylor, the clear runaway winner, 4 for 5, 3 runs, 6 RBIs. He has 3 home runs. The other hit besides the 3 home runs was a 2-out, 2-strike RBI single. Unbelievable performance from him. His OPS in the NLCS, or excuse me, in the playoffs is now up to 1.7176. That must be NLCS. But he's got a slugging percentage of 1.17 and an on-base percentage of 600. So he's clearly number 1, I would say. It's hard to argue with AJ Pollock as anything less than number 2. He's 3 for 5 with 3 runs and 4 RBIs, 2 home runs for himself as well. The Dodgers 3 for 8 with runners in scoring position tonight. We got to acknowledge that they hit 375. It's kind of all we were looking for. So Taylor 1, Pollock 2. That's where I think the conversation starts, which is who's third on the list. Like, if we could do the hockey thing, 3 stars. So who's the third guy that gets on the podium after a hockey game if you're the Dodgers tonight?
I think there's 4 that come to mind, and that's
6 stars tonight. 6 stars tonight, folks.
I mean, Cody got on base a bunch of times. He was great. He's in the mix there.
I want you to pick one. You got which of these guys do you want?
I'm laying out the options first, then I'm gonna pick one. Albert Pujols is also in the mix. He got on base 3 times, I think he did. Trey Turner got on base 4 times. But who I'm gonna go with my third player of the game is just the combined bullpen as a whole.
On. So we're not even doing third star, where that's like 8 stars that we're giving out tonight.
Yeah. Anytime the bullpen goes 8 1/3 shutout innings with 10 strikeouts or whatever, I think they deserve to be recognized for that. So when you got Pollock and Taylor providing the offense that they did, As great as those other guys were, I'm going to go with the bullpen as my third star because, there's an argument that they also won them this game.
If you had to pick a guy out of the bullpen, who would you go with?
I'll say Gratterall. I mean, two. Evan Phillips is probably the second guy, but Gratterall 2 shutout innings on 14 pitches. Hard to do better than that. He could have, honestly, if he goes out there and throws a third shutout inning, I might not say the bullpen is player of the game. I might have said just him.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think Phillips and Gratterall are the two guys, and you kind of mentioned it. I think Pujols, look, I would love to advocate for Pujols as the guy I predicted beforehand as my offensive MVP. He doesn't, I mean, and even Trey Turner, it's like, hey, he reached base 4 times. He scores once. He has 1 RBI. Like, the RBI was in garbage time. So it was like as unimpactful of a 4-base hit, reaching base 4 times as you could get on his end.
He didn't even steal a base, did he?
I don't think so.
How does Trey Turner stand on first base 4 times and not steal a base?
Yeah. Well, one of them he tried stealing, and Will Smith popped out on that pitch. But
that was also like the 4th pitch or something.
Well, and they actually made a great point on the broadcast, which as long as he was standing on first, it completely opened up the side of the field for Corey Seager to hit to, which normally they have 4 infielders on that side. So instead, because of where Trey Turner is standing, they actually have a normally spaced infield with the first baser holding him on. So that's a fascinating thing, which honestly makes me wonder the decision. That's probably why they haven't had Trey Turner hitting ahead of Corey Seager, is because then you neutralize the speed of Trey Turner to some degree. So I guess it's a positive either way, but I'm with you. I think Gratterall deserves credit. 14 pitches, 2 innings is absolutely insane. And then Evan Phillips, just as a guy that probably they were probably hoping to, I guess they weren't hoping to avoid him, because the way it shakes out, it's like they kind of maxed out everybody else besides Joe Kelly in this game. So for him to get 4 outs, to do it as easily as he did, and in a 2-0 game, right? Like a game that easily could have spiraled, especially after the Braves score 2, the Dodgers come up and basically go 1-2-3 in the first inning, I believe. And then he come back and gets 3 outs as well. So lots of stuff there. Ray points out Pujols set up Chris Taylor. That's true. He was on base a few of the times. Big Show Entertainment Network. I mean, we talked about this, Trey Turner. Do we feel good? You joked with me on Twitter that how many times did we see Cody Bellinger hit a home run or something, and everyone thought that he had turned it around. And I joked about how Dave Roberts will tell us how good the at-bat quality has been for the last week. But I will say the last hit, the RBI single that he had was roped into left field. That looked like quintessential Trey Turner. He had a couple balls that, now, was he trying to slap it through the shift? Was he trying just to make contact? Whatever it wasn't 10-foot infield singles. It was balls that seemed to be intentionally hit and with conviction towards the end of the game. So I'm encouraged. I'm not ready to say that pencil him in for being peak Trey Turner for the next game or 2 or however many there are, but I think the signs are encouraging. It didn't feel fluky. It's not like he was 1 for 4 with 3 strikeouts or something.
Yeah, and even with all that, I will say though, he still swung through about 4 or 5 pitches right down the middle tonight. But yeah, if that guy could just get on base, that's all we need. I don't care if it's a slap hit through the right side. I don't care if it's a home run. Just get on base, do your job, get it to the next guy, and then good things will come from that. So it's definitely encouraging. Like you said, that last at bat, the line drive, that was good to see, because the other 2 hits were just kind of ground balls. So the line drive was good to see. But at the end of the day, we'll see how he looks next game. For his last couple of bats, very low pressure in those at bats, I'd say. Yes, he pieces up a line drive in his last at bat, but it's also off the last guy in the Braves bullpen in an 11-2 game. So I don't know how much you could really take from that.
Yeah, Salvador wants me to say that I finally believe in Cody Bellinger. I think the way he's hitting now, you look at the hard hit rate, I think something like 80% of the time he hits the ball, it's hard hit. So absolutely. None of this changes the fact that he's been brutal in the regular season. I think we can be adults and have both of those conversations and say he was really, really bad. And we kept waiting for him to turn around, and it didn't happen, and it didn't happen, and it didn't happen. And now it did. And so absolutely, Bellinger's been fantastic. In the field, like you said, he provides confidence there. He goes 3 for 4 tonight. So credit to him. He's coming around. It's the same with Taylor. Taylor was 8 for 72 the last 5 weeks of the season. Gratterall was sent down to the minors. All of these guys, for anybody to say I knew this was going to happen, I don't think the odds would have been in your favor, but you're right. And so here we are. One other decision that we didn't get a chance to talk about that I know both of us had questions about, the decision to use Kenley Jansen in the 9th inning of this one. It's 11-2 game. At first I was well, they don't really have anyone else out there. And then I was actually, they do have Brule out there. All the lefties were due up. That seemed like it would have been the move. I don't know if this was, well, Kenley's only pitched, I think somebody said he had thrown like 15 pitches in the last 7 days or something like that. So they wanted to, get him some work. The other flip side is like, do you want those guys getting another look at Jansen? Well, maybe they didn't want those guys getting another look at Brule if he's the lefty specialist that they're going to see. Like, whatever. It ends up being like a 10-pitch inning. He gets out of it perfectly. But your thoughts on the decision to put Kenley Jansen in for the 9th in a 9-run game?
Yeah, I hated it personally. Like you said, like I don't want the middle of their order guys getting just free looks at Kenley.
Mm-hmm.
Like the reason Kenley has been so successful recently is because A, his cutter is moving the way it used to, and B, he's been incorporating his slider more, and that's a filthy pitch. So I don't want their main guy just getting free looks at those pitch. Like maybe they didn't hit him tonight, but hey, now they saw like, all right, his cutter does this and his breaking ball does this out of the hand. Like you could pick something up from that. So I didn't like it. I would have went with Brule. He could have ate up that inning easily. Like you could have went to a position player there. Obviously, you never do that in a postseason game. But the score is 11-2. Yeah. Why are we going to our closer here? I looked it up. Like Kenley, the thing with Kenley we've been saying all year is give this guy more rest, not less rest. Yeah. Like I don't care how much he's thrown in the last week. That's better. Like he's when he's had 3 days rest, pitching on 3 days rest this year, he did it 10 times and pitched 10 scoreless innings. Yeah. Like the more rest, the better for this guy. Like he was already throwing in the bullpen. So if you want to talk about the rust factor, like he got a bullpen session in, like he saw like his stuff is still sharp or whatever. Yeah. Like I don't think there's a huge rust factor there. To me, I would not have gone to Kenley. I don't think it's like a series changing decision at the end of the day, but to me, like, I just don't know why you're giving them free looks at our best reliever in an 11-2 game.
Yes. THP points out, potentially Kenley's last game in Dodger Stadium. I mean, I can't imagine you're thinking about that in the moment, but
no, you're not.
Yeah, you shouldn't be at least.
Yeah, the fans might be, but as a manager, I'd hope you're not thinking about that.
Yeah, and I mean, is it weird to say, like, it didn't feel like Kenley, hopefully intentionally, like, it didn't seem like he had his absolute best stuff. Like, he wasn't missing many bats, so hopefully he wasn't trying to throw perfect cutters and perfect breaking balls. Maybe he was just saying, hey, throw some junk up there, get 3 outs, and get out of there, regardless of what it looks like. Who knows? But at the end of the day, like you said, I don't think this is like the Julio decision in Game 2 where there's a massive ripple effect down the line. Yeah. I'm not going to come back to this game and say, if Freddie Freeman hits a home run off of him in Game 6 or Game 7, that it was because of this, whatever. Right. If anything, maybe it went the other way. Kenley got all these guys out, and maybe the confidence is even lower in those guys when they have to face Kenley. So it ends up working out that way. Let's see. Any other questions that people have? Batting orders. Roger's asking about the batting order. Do you leave Trey in the 2-hole? I mean, he seemed to do all right there. Maybe you don't mess with it. There is a righty on the mound, so getting Seager up in the 2-hole. I mean, the other thing is Chris Taylor. Does Chris Taylor finally get moved out of the 7-8 spot? It's a righty. Does Bellinger get moved out of the 8 spot?
Yeah. To me, those two guys both need to be moved up. I think if you start Beatty, you have no problem batting him 8th. Yeah. I think Pollock 7th is fine. I think Chris Taylor 5th and Cody 6th. Like those guys are up. That's fine. And then you could leave the top 4 how you had it. I'd say they'd probably go back to Trey 3rd because that's what they've been doing against righties. I'd probably move Trey down, but I know it's not even a possibility at this point. Like if you weren't moving him down when he was 0 for the series, you're not doing it after the game that he reaches 4 times. So I'm still expecting Trey to bat either 2nd or 3rd. But I do think the adjustments you can make is move Taylor up to 5th and Cody to 6th because those guys are both just tearing the cover off the ball right now.
Yeah, breaking news just came in. Joe Kelly done for the rest of the postseason. Dave Roberts confirms that. So he will be out. So
fortunate.
As we said, I think there were rules that I think it has to be a pitcher that replaces him, which obviously makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
And so the names that we threw out, David Price would probably be the most likely, the most obvious. He's there. You see him in the dugout. I think that the alternative options would be, I don't know if we have a list of who's been on the taxi squad. He seems like the guy that you see in the dugout. Obviously, I've seen Billy McKinney in the dugout. I don't know if there have been other pitchers that have been hanging around in the dugout in these games. But yeah, bicep strain, I guess, is the report that is that's coming in. So yeah, interesting. I mean, Price, like, he just hasn't been good is the problem. The flip side is, that's sort of a break glass in case of emergency situation. And if you get into the 12th inning of a game and you just say, all right, David, you're the last guy on the roster. So we'll see how much life you've got left in that arm of yours. He is a lefty, which they're worse against lefties. So that's, in my opinion, it should be a lefty.
Experience.
Yeah, it would have to be a lefty. That's why I would lean either Clevenger or Price. Again, some people mention guys like Andre Jackson or I shouldn't say Edwin Uceda is no longer on the 40-man roster, so it won't be him. But Mitch White would be the other guy as well. I can't even think of other relief pitchers because Phillips was the other guy that.
I think it'll be David Price if I had to guess.
Yeah.
They were comfortable enough to put him on. What was he on the NLDS roster? I think.
Yeah.
So I mean, they were at least comfortable enough to do that. He's the only one of that bunch that has actual playoff experience, which doesn't mean everything, but it means something.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how Mitch White is going to react, going into a playoff game when he hasn't pitched a game of meaning in a month here or whatever. So I think it'll be Price. The Kelly news is unfortunate. Like he seemed to finally put it all together this year, had a really great season. And he's a guy who they've trusted kind of as the fireman, like in this postseason, where if it might be the fourth inning, it might be the fifth inning. Like if there's two guys on, he's been the guy they've gone to every time. So now someone else is going to have to take on that role. So I don't know who that's going to be, but that's a big loss for sure.
Yeah, I mean, who would you? I mean, Bickford's kind of got the same profile as far as the type of stuff that he throws.
I think that's who it would be.
Yeah,
but I think that's who it would
it's not nearly as nasty. It's like a fastball that's 3 to 4 miles an hour slower, although has the same type of movement, ground ball type pitcher. He's got the slider as well. I mean, it could be Evan Phillips. Honestly, he's got the swing and miss stuff the way that he's been missing bats. So interesting to see how that plays out. And hey, you know what? David Price, veteran, but well rested, Daniel. Well rested, arm is fresh and ready to go. So
and I still think his role would be like kind of what we saw from Gonzalez last night. Like if this game's out of if this game's out of hand on either side, you could go to Price for 2-3 innings and hopefully he could just eat them. Like I'm not whoever gets added to this roster, I'm not expecting them to just jump right into high leverage situations in Game 6 of the NLCS.
Yeah, well, we said that about Andy Burns too, and there he was batting in the third inning with runners in scoring position. So who knows what to expect in this one? So yeah, a fun one. I mean, it's the bottom line here. The Dodgers win 11-2. Again, Chris Taylor, the clear MVP. AJ Pollock clearly second on that list. Unbelievable stuff with him. Then you've got Gratterall giving you 2 innings on 14 pitches. Evan Phillips getting four outs on 15 pitches. Vesia really good. Again, I mean, the Dodgers bullpen, 8 1/3. I say bullpen if we ignore Joe Kelly, who is technically the starter, so this fits. 8 1/3, 0 earned runs, just 3 hits, no walks, 9 strikeouts for them. Just an absolutely shut down, dominant performance. Max Scherzer on full rest for Game 6 Saturday in Atlanta. Time TBD, depending on if the Astros finish off the Red Sox tomorrow, then that game would be moved back with Daniel and I. Well, I don't know. I mean, what are you rooting for, Daniel? Neither of us want to see the Red Sox in the World Series, but you and I also don't want to have to decide between watching the Oregon Ducks versus UCLA on Saturday simultaneously with the Dodgers. So what are you rooting for? Are you rooting for the Red Sox and a conflict on Saturday, or are you rooting for the Astros and a well-planned out Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say for Dodger purposes, like it's ideal that series goes 7 games just so they could burn more of their pitchers and such. So I'd say for those purposes, I'll be rooting for the Red Sox to win. But like you said, our two teams, I'm a UCLA fan, you're an Oregon fan. They play at 12:30 on Saturday. The Lakers also usually practice in the afternoon on Saturdays. So that would be a busy afternoon for me personally. So I'd love to just lock into a nice 5:00 Dodger game like that. That'd be perfect. I don't even know why they keep scheduling these 2:00 games. Yeah. It's annoying. I guess this one's on the East Coast, so it's a little better. Yeah, and it's on a weekend. But so I guess I'm torn. I don't really care either way. I'd say the number one priority is the Dodgers winning the World Series, and the best thing for that is for that other series to go 7. And honestly, the best thing for that is the Red Sox to win the series. Period. Yeah. If we're being honest, so I'd say I'll take one for the team and get through that 2:00 game doing a million things at once. If it means the Dodgers have a better chance.
That's what second screens were invented for. The 12:30 kick, halftime. You flip over. You got the Dodger game at 2:08. And we'll see. So Scherzer, quickly, we're right at the hour mark here, Daniel, so I'll get you out of here on this. Scherzer, fully rested. Are you expecting peak Scherzer on Saturday?
I definitely am. Like, even Scherzer's first outing, wasn't that bad. Yeah. Jock hits a ball to the moon, but outside of that pitch, he doesn't give up any other runs, and he actually looked really good in the first 3 innings for a guy who was pitching with a dead arm. So I don't know how his arm is feeling. I'm going to guess it's feeling fine. And he's had a normal time through the rotation. He's been able to get back on his normal routine. So I'm definitely expecting big things out of Max Scherzer. that guy lives for these type of moments. Big game 6 on the road. You don't find competitors like him very often, so I think he's going to come through.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you look at his 4 postseason appearances so far. Obviously, one of them is the closing out of Game 5. That was a perfect inning with 2 strikeouts. But then he's got the wild card game where he goes 4 1/3, 3 hits, 3 walks, 1 earned run, 4 strikeouts, excuse me. And anybody who watched that would tell you that he was worse than the box score in that one. 4 1/3 and 1 earned run.
I think there's something to be said when a guy could look that bad and still like minimize the damage. That's what it's important again. At the end of the day, like literally the only thing I care about in the playoffs is the run column. Like if you walk 8 guys and give up no runs, I'm fine with it. It's not going to be fun to watch, but the fact that Max in 2 of his starts has clearly not had his best stuff and still been able to battle and kind of minimize the damage, that's huge.
Yeah, in his last start, 4 1/3, 4 hits, 2 earned runs, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. So a better performance, but again, dead arm. But I think the reason for optimism is that October 11th start on normal rest against the Giants, 7 innings, 3 hits, 1 walk, 10 strikeouts. Of course, because the Dodgers are the Dodgers, they end up losing that game 1-0, and he takes the loss. But that was the game you were at, right?
Yeah, that was not fun.
Classic.
That was the win game.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the upside, right? Is that he will be pitching on this one on October 23rd. So he's actually going to get an extra day of rest from his normal. So October 17th was his last one. So he's going to get pitching on the 6th day, which is good. Get that arm rested up. And again, like you said, we're only looking for 4 or 5 innings. If you can get 5, I mean, with Kelly out, maybe that number creeps up a little bit. But if you could get 5, even 6 innings, that would be the dream scenario. Hand it over to Knebel, Treinen, and Jansen, and we live to fight another day. Dodgers will be heavy favorites. It'll be on the road, but lots of fun to look forward to there. So, folks, we appreciate you joining us. Laura, Sergio, Romeo, Ederico, Ray, Ito, Nomo Fomo, Nando 390, the Witch King. Shout out to the Witch King, Dodger Love 518. We appreciate all of you folks on Facebook, folks on Twitter. Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining us. That's Daniel Starkand. My name's Jeff Spiegel. We'll have a pregame show ahead of the game on Saturday, so stay tuned for that. Again, depending on what time that game is, it's currently slated for 2:08. But again, if the Astros were to defeat the Red Sox tomorrow, that game would be moved to a 5 o'clock first pitch. So stay on the lookout for that. But we'll do a pregame of some sort, a postgame as well, and we'll see what happens. We thought today might be the last day of the Dodgers season. Twas not.
Still alive.
Chris Taylor says, no, thank you. We're going to continue playing. So
not today.
The Dodgers are still alive. They move on to game 6, and who knows? We've seen this one before, right? That's Daniel. I'm Jeff. Check out DodgerBlue.com, DodgerBlue 1958, all the latest. They'll have breaking news as soon as we find out who's taking Joe Kelly's spot. They'll have post-game press conferences right here on Dodger Blue 1958 YouTube channel. So subscribe, ring the notification bell, and we will see you soon.
The best team holding a trophy high in the air. The Los Angeles Dodgers, champions of the baseball world.